NRATV with Grant Stinchifeld.
We have an update to our Safe Schools investigation covering all 50 states. We're asking, what is your child's school doing to make it safe? And in Idaho, the state is letting districts decide. We've learned several districts are arming up with resource officers. Even teachers are training to carry in Idaho. And in one district leading the way, Garden Valley. They've had armed teachers since the 2015 school year. It's what you do when police are 45 miles away. Just listen to what school leaders told a local TV station there.
Our staff is armed and will take whatever measures necessary to protect the students and staff.
There. That is proof. A sign outside the school warns staff are legally armed. You can imagine how relieved students are.
My thought is, I'm grateful that our teachers are armed and stuff because it helps protect us if there is something to happen, and it's posted all over around the outside of the school, so it's more likely that we're not going to have those issues.
Those kids know what's up, no doubt about that. It is a good thing that the faculty is training. You know, they say police are 45 minutes away. The bottom line is the police can be down the hall. And that could be too far away if there is an active shooter situation. The more good guys and gals around with firearms, the better off. We've been saying it for a long time. Why? Because we mean it, and it's true. We've designed these reports to help you start thinking about school safety in your hometown. If you expect your child to be safe in school, and you should, just demand more from your state, your city, your local school district. And while you're at it, tell them about the NRA School Shield program. Our experts on risk assessment have helped hundreds of schools across the country. The program is free, and your school will, of course, be safer for going through that program. Check it out at nraschoolshield.org. The Montana governor is a liar. He claims to be a hunter and a gun owner, but continuously proves his ignorance when talking about firearms. The two-term Democrat claimed to be pro-gun until he started contemplating a run for the White House in 2020. Now he is for an all-out ban on some semi-automatic firearms as well as magazines with more than 10 rounds. But listen to him. He gives himself away as an uninformed anti-gunner with no legitimate knowledge of firearms. This is what he said at a recent news conference. When I view an assault weapons ban, it's sort of military, semi-automatic, typically removable clips, a magazine of 10 or more. It's like the AR-15s. Where do I start? Sort of military? What does that even mean? It either is military or it's not. And AR-15s are not. They may look military style, but just because I wear a Yankees jersey and look like a New York Yankee doesn't make me a New York Yankee. And then he talks about removable clips. That's the biggest giveaway of all. They are magazines, Governor, and it is the norm for them to be removable. This is not a novelty as you make it out to be. And if he really claims to be a gun owner, a knowledgeable gun owner, no one would advocate for high-capacity magazine bans. In a firefight, 10 rounds may not be enough. 6 or 7 certainly isn't many times. But only a true gun owner, one who spends time practicing, would know this. Governor Bullock clearly doesn't. So don't lie to me and tell me someone you are not, Governor. I know exactly who you are. A Bloomberg-style anti-gunner who happens to live in Montana, not New York City. It is no secret that the Democrats are embracing the idea of socialism from top to bottom. Democrats are running their campaigns embracing the idea that your things aren't actually your things. Bernie Sanders revamped the age-old and failed policies of socialism and inserted them into the mainstream in, of course, the 2016 election. Elizabeth Warren, someone who has made a living off of taking things that don't belong to her, namely her position as a member of Harvard Law faculty, has come up with the most tyrannical takeover of private property in the history of this country. Branded as the Accountable Capitalism Act, this piece of legislation would allow the government to force the way business owners run their businesses. They'd be able to dictate your business's next move from the swamp in Washington, D.C. In short, the system would work like this. If your business begins earning $1 billion in revenue per year, you would be required to give up your sovereignty. That's right, your private ownership of your business, the stock you own in your publicly traded company, to the office of the United States of Corporations, to whichever communist czar that was appointed to steal your business. This sort of policy won't do what Elizabeth Warren wants it to do. It won't create better wages. It won't create more accountability. And it sure as hell won't create any more jobs. Up-and-coming businesses with the next big idea would lose all incentive to achieve their very best. They'd reach that billion-dollar mark and two things would happen. One, they may say, well, why would I want to create more profit, create more wealth, create more jobs if I'm going to be punished by it and taken over by the government for it? This is the liberals' big mistake. They think everyone will just comply. Corporations will start breaking off into smaller corporations, making each division its own entity just to stay under the billion-dollar mark, and then the government doesn't have control of anything as well. That would be a good thing. Businesses are smart enough to realize that's what they need to do. Elizabeth Warren doesn't understand it. I think she does know, though, that the system won't work, but that's not her goal. Her goal is to divide America and ultimately conquer it. She underestimates the passion and resolve the American people have for freedom. Here's what Dr. Lee Edwards of the Heritage Foundation told me about this plan. Edwards is a well-known historian.
Truly believe that they know better than we how to run our lives. And this has always been the progressive idea. Let's turn over power, let's turn over authority to bureaucrats, to progressives, to liberal intellectuals. They know better than we do how to run our lives. Well, this, by the way, it seems to me, Grant, is the most radical legislation that we've seen, really going all the way back to the New Deal in 1933 and the so-called National Recovery Administration, which I'm happy to say was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And that goes to how very important what happens to Mr. Kavanaugh here in Washington, D.C. is going to be for the future.
You better believe it, because the Supreme Court is a firewall for all of us. So Elizabeth Warren pushes this egregious overreach of power, and it scares me that we're seeing these sorts of proposals right here in America, proposals we would have never seen just a few years ago. Elizabeth Warren is a socialist zealot, and she needs to be exposed for the tyrant that she is. The mainstream media spends every opportunity they have to attack the president and ICE agents and pin them as what? Racists. But don't you dare call the media out on it, because they will deny. CNN's Don Lemon has a history of calling the president a racist, but when a campaign advisor for President Trump calls him out for those attacks and the mainstream media's hateful aim at ICE agents, Don Lemon claims it never happened.
Listen, you do it on your show almost every night. You call the president a racist. So don't tell me this doesn't happen, all right? Any viewer knows it does. And speaking of ICE specifically, I wrote an article about this in Real Clear Politics.
Any viewer does not know that, Steve. I'm not going to let you get away with that. Because what you said is just
Don, you call him a racist every night.
True. Well, would you like me to go through the evidence about his racism that you can't see because you have these Trump blinders on, because you have Trump derangement blinders on? You have no evidence to back up that the mainstream media is somehow vilifying Border Patrol agents and people who work on the border. That is simply not true.
Because I do think mainstream media absolutely demonizes ICE continually. For example, let me give you an example from just yesterday, or I guess it was 2 days ago.
Let's not, please. Let's not.
So he cuts him off, doesn't want to give him an example. How about you've got the New York media fawning over this teach-out moron in New York who wants to be attorney general and says she's going to lock ICE agents up. There was a time when I worked in journalism when you would never even give a platform like that, lending legitimacy to locking up law enforcement officers for enforcing the law. But this is what the mainstream media does. And as for Don Lemon, I have heard Don Lemon on numerous occasions call the president a racist. He does these great acts of grandeur where he stops everything and says, I just have to declare this right now. And he goes on and on and on about Donald Trump and how negative he is towards anybody that is not like Donald Trump. And I'm talking about people of color. All of it is bogus. It's Don Lemon's nonsense, and he knows it. For Don Lemon to claim that he's never called the president a racist boggles me. So I'm dispatching the crew right now to pull some sound bites of Don Lemon calling the president a racist. We're going to find him for you. Joining me now is the managing editor for the Media Research Center, Brittany Hughes. Brittany, you have watched Don Lemon. How could he claim that he has not called the president a racist?
Well, he did so just, a week or two ago after the president tweeted about LeBron James. And Don Lemon actually, and we wrote it up at MRC TV and over at Newsbusters, you can go and look, came out with a 9-minute monologue outright calling the president a racist. As a matter of fact, he used the word racist right there in the clip that you just played, Grant. He said, would you like me to go through the evidence of his racism? So he's saying he didn't call him a racist and then coming out and calling him a racist. That's absolutely ridiculous. And also going over, to MRC, you can see he might say that there's no evidence that the mainstream media has gone after ICE agents. We've compiled evidence that they've gone after ICE agents. This is a mainstream media that has spent the last several months running stories about how border agents and immigration officials are rounding up people like the Nazi SS. They're putting children into concentration camps. They are President Trump's Gestapo. They have used these actual words in their broadcast, and they've brought panel after panel after panel of so-called experts to come in and shill for this idea that ICE are nothing but a bunch of brown shirts running around rounding up mothers and children. None of those claims are true, but they have made them repeatedly for weeks. And so for Don Lemon to sit there and say, look, if you want to have, if you want to think that President Trump is racist or you want to think ill of ICE, that's your opinion to have. But to sit there and claim that the media has not peddled these lines when he himself has done so repeatedly to the point where you don't even have to look very far to find the evidence is he must just think that his viewers are the dumbest people on the planet, which is wildly insulting.
Well, I don't want to say anything bad about his viewers, but if they're watching Don Lemon, maybe he's right, because I don't know why anybody would watch him unless you're gathering information about what the left is doing and the lies that they're spewing. All right, Don Lemon says he never called the president a racist. I think we found something here. Let's roll it.
We know what Donald Trump thinks. We know what Roseanne Barr thinks. It's time for us to stop playing around with soft words by saying, they're saying insensitive things. No, it's racist. They're exhibiting racist behavior. And far too many of our fellow...
Bingo. Do we need any more? I mean, it's racist behavior, he says. He's calling the president a racist. Flat out. I remember that, actually. We played that rant on our program here. But this is what they do, Brittany. They will look the camera straight in the eye. Don Lemon looked the camera straight in the eye, the American people straight in the eye. He says, I've never called the president a racist. And there you have it. Lies exposed.
Absolutely. I wonder how long it took your people to find that clip, actually. Probably no more than about 30 seconds. All you've got to do is look on Google or on YouTube. And it's really funny because Don Lemon, I actually interviewed Don Lemon a few years ago, and it was one of the funniest interviews that I ever did because I looked right at him and I said, do you think that there's any evidence of liberal bias in the media? Or actually, I don't even think I said liberal bias. I think I just said bias. And he looked at me and he goes, no, there's no bias in the media. And it was all I could do to keep from absolutely busting out laughing right there because he is one of the most biased people on the media right now. So for him to make these claims, it's wild. It's completely inaccurate. He knows when he says it that it's inaccurate. And I think the vast majority of Americans know too.
Don Lemon is the most dangerous kind of newsman. If I even give him that moniker, he doesn't deserve it, because he's not really a newsman. You don't know whether he's an anchor person or whether he's a pundit. Look, Rachel Maddow, I know where she stands. I know what to expect from her. Lawrence O'Donnell, the same thing. I know what to expect from Sean Hannity. You know what to expect from me. But what does the American people think Don Lemon is? Have they even said what he is, Brittany Hughes?
Well, and I think that's one of the most dangerous things in the media today, and you and I have actually talked about it on this show, is the idea of reporters and journalists holding themselves up to be completely objective and unbiased while spewing their own opinion all over the place, and you don't know what they are. Again, you're exactly right. You know what you're going to get when you watch a Rachel Maddow or a Sean Hannity. You know what you're going to get when you listen to a pundit, and everybody has their favorite commentator that they go to for analysis. But what is really bothersome is when people like Don Lemon, who you're not sure, is he a commentator, is he a reporter, is he giving you news or opinion? Same exact thing with, the most famous example right now is Jim Acosta, who you don't know, is he a White House correspondent or is he an activist? Is he a reporter or is he somebody that you're going to go to for opinion and commentary because he seems to like the sound of his own voice more than he likes the sound of other people's trying to give him answers to his questions? That's the problem you have in 2018, is this blurred line between actual journalism and commentary, and the media is making no effort to try to draw the difference, because they want you to think that it's all one and the same, right? That their opinion is the news, are the facts, and that's simply not true.
It's devious and it's trickery. And that's what the Media Research Center is there for. And in many respects, it's what NRATV is here for, too. We constantly call them out. It is a full-time job. Brittany Hughes, you do a great job at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's going to do it for us. This edition, anyway. We're back here in 45 minutes from now. I'm Grant Stinchifeld. Thanks for watching NRATV. We'll see you here in a little bit.
You're watching NRATV with Grant Stinchifeld.